Welcome back, everyone, to the Hearthstone Grandmasters for the Americas region. Our first match today is PNC versus Frozen. And let's go ahead and dive right into it, TJ. With this, Frozen and PNC both looking to see if they can improve their matches from per record rather for the first week. Keep in mind that this season, for season 2, one of the things that Admirable and Soddle and Derek and Raven were bringing up was the importance of every match, given that relegation is an important thing. And also, if you look at the lens through season 1, a lot of records were decided by 1 or 2 series between maybe like 3rd place and 7th place. So huge. Every win here feels huge for the players as the foundation leading up into the weeks going to playoffs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of players last season that had a rough start, and even though they had a good second half of the season, it just wasn't enough to get across the finish line into the playoffs. We'll see how things shape up for the players that are trying to turn their poor season 1 around. But these players are not players that had poor season 1s. Frozen was the highest record after the regular season finished of any player across America's Grandmasters. And PNC, he won the thing. So not a bad season at all. Now, PNC did have a rough start last season, but he was able to pick it up and barely qualify for playoffs. And this season, he's also off to a rough start. So looking for the turnaround for himself again, but he's shown us that he has that ability, right? At the beginning of season 1, he said that he wasn't focusing on Hearthstone probably as much as he should have, maybe not practicing as much as he should have, bringing the wrong lists. And he changed it. And I don't know what the problem was in week 1 for him, but it's just 1 week, brush it off. Hey, win out from here. And he still got that opportunity.
The biggest challenge that PNC seemed to have vocalized was his anxiety being on camera and competing. He admitted that he hadn't really played too much high-stakes Hearthstone with a lot of people watching. And it's scary because in Grandmasters, you're also under the scrutiny, especially in Season 1, given how much, how exclusive the club was, right? There's only 16 players per region. You always feel like there's some players that are snuffed and as a result, excluded from it. And that's just the nature of the competition. We can always justify, no matter how deep we go. If we invite 100 players, 101st player who's deserving also, gets left out in that spot. So PNC saying, you know what, that pressure really got to me. And we'll see, and we've seen a complete growth in 180 from that position that PNC felt like he was in that spot. Now let's go ahead and focus on the lineups. We did see that Warrior was banned on both sides with the Druid and a Paladin Protect. Frozen with the Protect on his Holy Wrath Paladin, going up against Murloc Paladin. This is not a matchup that I anticipate seeing at all this weekend. And now it's going to be the first thing that's let off. I'm already digging the patch, TJ.
Oh, yeah. We're seeing a lot more diversity, and we're seeing a lot more diversity in, archetypes specifically. Not necessarily single decks, but archetypes. There's a good mix of aggro, control, and mid-range. And we're even seeing a couple of combo decks. I would lump Holy Wrath Paladin in with the combo decks, obviously. We saw Viper's Druid, which was a combo deck, and combo Priest. So I don't even know where to lump Quest Druid in with that. I think it's a mid-range deck, but it kind of has a unique playstyle that we haven't really seen thus far in Hearthstone. But we'll talk about that more later. Getting into a Paladin mirror matchup, but as you mentioned, obviously not a mirror matchup. Holy Wrath Paladin versus Murloc Paladin. No Prismatic Lens in the opening hand for PNC, which means that he's going to have to fight honestly with Murlocs to start things off, and this will give opportunities for Frozen to find the removal necessary to deal with those tip the scales once they come down. And effectively, once you deal with that, the game isn't over, because Chef Nomi and Zephyrus are still included in these Murloc Paladin decks, and that gives them some life even after cycling through their decks early. So it's kind of an interesting deck, to say the least. You'd want to lump it in with aggressive decks because it is a Murloc deck. But at the same time, it also has some weird amount of longevity to it, which aggro decks have not seen for quite some time.
Yeah, I think it gives it some actual late game finishers outside of, well, I just hope my Murlocs stick and I win.
Yeah.
Frozen, in the meantime, needs to find a way to stave off that pressure. Oh, Prismatic Ledge drawn on 3 for PNC.
Nice.
And a Cold Light Seer number 2, which is fairly important, given that PNC will try to get things outside of range of Consecration. So things are really looking pretty good for PNC.
Yeah. I mean, there's a small amount of my brain that says, yeah, push face damage and don't care about Consecration, because if a Consecration comes down, that's one less removal that Frozen potentially has for the turn 5 tip the scales. So you're not too upset about it, and also you're not too upset about your board being clear, because that just means you summon more Murlocs with tip the scales, which gets you deeper into your deck. Oh, did he pick up Prismatic? Nope. Okay, got the tip the scales. It puts you deeper into your deck and means that you're getting to your powerful stuff quicker. So I like the face attack there for PNC and kind of disrespecting Consecration because he knows that he has good follow-up to it.
Well, Frozen can preemptively set up a board prior to PNC playing Tip the Scales. He knows that it's a certainty to come down unless one thing happens, which is that PNC swaps Chef Nomi with Tip the Scales, which is pretty unlikely, given the case.
Yeah. It's usually worth the risk to play it.
It is. It is worth the risk. It's just that it's happened one time.
Yeah. So Bluegill Warrior, one in the hand, or both in the hand, so not going to be able to get that immediate damage, but still quite a threatening board here from PNC, to say the very least. Frozen does not have removal, but he does have the timeout, so he can buy himself a turn, which is crucial because otherwise he'd most likely just die with nothing available in his hand.
Yes, and Frozen forced to go for a timeout to try and draw deeper into his deck. Finds Pyromancer, finds the Equality.
Ooh.
That's a combo. And now he can even set up for the follow-up plays. So he can
Elven
Archer and then keep that 1 mana free to even play Murmy next turn. Definitely wants to dump at least 1 card in the hand. Perhaps in his mind, Frozen feels like playing the Murmy is better, so you can keep the Elven Archer for flexibility.
Yeah, you can always fit in the Elven Archer next turn. Wild Pyromancer or Quality, and then Elven Archer, what comes out from the Murmy. The problem with this play, actually, no, there's no punish to this because I was thinking if he could push damage, he could trade off one of his Murlocs and then use that spot for Bluegill Warrior, but with the timeout set up, Murmy is just kind of a throwaway here.
PNC trying to justify if there's anything worth developing in this spot, given that Frozen already has used 1 Consecration, but with 2 Prismatic Lens played, I think in his mind, he feels like there's a high chance Frozen has a removal spell. If I were PNC, I'd probably consider trying to develop the Murloc Tasty Fin to keep the card draw going, so that way there's a higher chance Chef Nomi and Zephyrus can come into play this game.
Yeah.
Let's move quickly.
So one thing that Frozen did set up here was he set up the ability to play, potential to play Blood Mage Thalnos, plus a Consecration pickup if he were to pick it up. Because the Murmy would likely force the trade from the higher health stuff. But alas, Frozen gets the board clear.
Yes, and with a 2-mana Equality, man, that card would be broken at 2 mana. Frozen can get the board clear. Elven Archer gets the final say on the board. PNC has all of his duplicate cards active, or rather the Highlander cards. Zephyrus,
wow,
and the Sir Finley. This is something that PNC was doing a good job using that deck tracker and paying attention to the fact that he only has 1 copy of each remaining.
That is...
Let me think.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal, and it's also pretty unlikely with 10 cards left. He only has 12 duplicates in the deck.
Yeah, but that's what Tip the Scales does. It helps pull out a lot of those duplicates.
Yeah. It's just usually, like, on average, it happens with, like, if you play the Tip the Scales, 7 cards remaining.
Right.
6 to 7 cards remaining since you have the 12 duplicates.
It is fairly uncommon to see it active this early.
Yeah.
But when you do play Tip the Scales, it does tend to lend itself to that. Silver Hand, Totemic Slam, and Ballista Shot. Ballista Shot is the most raw power to help close the game out. It's probably something I'm leaning towards. I was considering slightly just being able to have 2 Silver Hand recruits be summoned at the Odd Paladin hero power.
Yeah.
But I mean, 3 damage a turn. It's very nasty to deal with.
Yeah, it is. And the biggest thing that it does, I think, is once Frozen gets really low, you don't have to develop at all with Ballista Shot in order to like play around Cheval the Tiger for a turn. You can set up multiple turn lethals. I mean, right now, just with Ballista Shot, he has 7 damage from hand. So that's a pretty big burst for Murloc Paladin, honestly, especially considering that War Leaders and the Grimscale Oracles were pulled both from the Tip to Scales. So his ability to like burst with Murloc buffs is pretty limited.
Does seem to be the case. Frozen has an opportunity to draw cards in this position. Acolyte and Pyromancer tends to be a really nice combo.
Speak to me.
Seems like Frozen not afraid to take a little bit extra damage here. Versus Kangor, that's going to be crucial. Blood Mage Thanos get the draw invested onto the board now. You can always play Novice Engineered and draw that card immediately, but you need Blood Mage Thanos to die. So setting that up is a good sequence. PNC picks up the Prismatic Lens, which should get the other Tip to Scales, given that there's only 4 spells in the deck in the traditional Murloc Paladin lists.
And that would pull the majority of the remaining Murlocs.
Right, which makes Chef Nomi even better.
Yeah, actually, I think it might pull them all.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there's 7 board spaces.
Yeah, there's 7 board spaces. I was thinking it won't pull the rest of the cards in his deck because he still has a Hungry Crab left in his deck. So there's 6 Murlocs left. So he's trying to do the math right now to see if he can pull the Murlocs without trading in, because if I'm counting correctly, I think there's 6 Murlocs remaining and the final card is a Hungry Crab.
Okay. Good to me.
Nope, I was wrong.
I'm almost out of
Oh, no, it was. It just delayed because of the Tide Caller.
Yeah, very interesting interaction, but a little quirky, is that the order of which Murloc Tidecaller comes out also summons, or gives attack based off what is summoned afterwards.
Yep.
Well, very wonky, but you just have to remember that in case it ever becomes relevant. So a Consecration is a clear here for Frozen, which is huge, because now Frozen can also go for the Christmas Kangor. Both players are trying to race at the bottom of their deck, and it's quite amazing that Paladin has just gotten so good at card draw that both decks effectively deck out, you know, by 10 mana on average.
Murloc Paladin does it faster, which is kind of the funny part.
It can do it faster. I wonder if on average if it does actually do it.
Yeah, that's a good question, because obviously Holy Wrath Paladin doesn't work consistently because their entire deck is draw, whereas the Murloc Paladin is limited to Prismatic Lens, Tip the Scales, or just wait until turn 8 and then double Tip the Scales. Zephyr's not active.
Zephyr's not active.
There are 2 copies of True Silver Champion in the deck, and I think that's the only duplicate remaining. So he needs to draw that 1 True Silver Champion, I believe, before he gets to that point. And now, he only... Oh, okay, Shrink Ray. Finds the Shrink Ray. I was saying he needs a way to deal with Chef Nomi. But Shrink Ray will allow him to at least stop some of that damage. Does have a timeout left remaining in the deck.
Yeah, these Murloc Paladins don't really run some way to bounce the Chef Nomi right back, so 1 Shrink Ray should be able to do it. Now Frozen's just thinking about the other 5 mana that he wants to use here. does have the ability to use Christmas Kangor and the second flash heal, flash of light rather, so that he can draw. The thing is, Frozen also knows that because of the fatigue, it's going to really matter about the life total that PNC has. But PNC already used a True Silver Champion. And Zephyrus is not going to offer any kind of life gain situation. So the closer Frozen can get to that guaranteed Holy Wrath scenario, the better. So it might even behoove him to try to find ways to just maximize card draw in the next 2 turns.
Yeah, I mean, he knows that there's actually just no possible way that PNC can gain life right now. Unless he were to preemptively pick a Zephyrus card that gained life. He played it with 3 mana remaining like 3 turns ago. The likelihood that he picked a heal card with Zephyrus is very, very low. And this is smart because Tyrion is pretty much the only card you'll ever want from Zephyrus.
Right.
Unless you have lethal and like get a fireball on board. And so this gives him just like an extra turn of not taking much damage in order to get that done. So I didn't know.
This is so smart. He knows about burst damage from PNC's hand. He knows that there's extra Murlocs. He knows that there's that 100 hero power. And Frozen's trying to account for the possibility that PNC would kill him from the hand. Now, there's 7 damage on board, so Frozen says, okay, I'm going to take 10 because of the hero power. He can't take 10 again. But he can clear the board if he wants. He can also gain life.
Timeout and True Silver Champion are the last 2 cards.
Okay, so this is the second timeout.
Yeah,
so guaranteed to be
so
drawn.
this will be guaranteed second timeout, so it should be a guaranteed win for Frozen here.
Yes, very nicely done. Mapped out a 3-turn lethal, and PNC is locked out. No way to do anything. Hero power is eligible to be pressed. But with the pass back over, PNC's going to let Frozen have the final say here.
Yep. Yeah, it was a nice spot for Frozen. You just need to find a way to guarantee it. And it's turning like a 99% win chance into a 100% win chance. Very nicely done. And Frozen, pretty clean game 1 from him to take the lead in the series.
Yes, really well done. And I think it just goes to show you once again that Frozen excels in these kinds of environments where he's able to practice his combo decks. Also, if you remember back in Season 1, Frozen was playing the OTK Paladin deck with things like Elven Architect before other players were catching on to it. And it's something that he discovered along with a few other people that were practicing with him and on ladder. But no one else was really adopting that. This was in a specialist format when you can only bring 1 deck and the risk was much greater.
Yeah, it was. He has a deep connection with the Chinese Hearthstone scene, and that's where it had originated from. And he was one of the first players to bring it, especially with Elven Archer. So cool to see it still alive and kicking now with Zephyrus the Great being thrown in as an extra tool.
All right, we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we're going to find out if Frozen closes out the series or if PNC is going to strike back.
My name is Sam Braithwaite, and I'm the Senior Global Franchise Lead for Hearthstone Esports. This event was especially cool because it takes place right after the brand new expansion, Rise of Shadows. Historically in Hearthstone Esports, we do our big events like this towards the end of an expansion cycle. But we really wanted to shake things up and really showcase that not only is the world champion the person who can pilot the best decks, but also the person who, when presented with a brand new game, can put together the best decks leading into the World Championship. Cheers to you guys, the sold-out crowd here for the HCT 2019 World Championship.
Welcome back to 2019 HCT World Championship.
We've had a lot of fun games, and we're looking forward to the grand finals. Showdown. Viper versus Hunter Race. Only one can be the champion. Oh, come on.
Match be dead.
Wacko pick of this coming out from Hunter.
It's now or never. Archville and Rafal.
Okay. In a completely solved game, Hunter Ace finds a way to maximize his chances. It's been a wonderful journey throughout the past few years of the Hearthstone Championship Tour, where stars were made and dreams came true.
My name is Francisco Fraile Montas. One of my best friends came out with my nickname. We are all getting like nicknames with 3 letters for some reason, like 13 years old. My name is Francisco, and Francisco's called Pancho. So it's just like 3 letters from that, P and C. One interesting thing about me that most people don't know is that I used to study ancient history. I quit for Hearthstone a couple of years, but plan on going back at one point. My favorite Hearthstone esports moment was when I topped like Lethal 2016 Copa America Finals. That was like my first big win, and I was very, very happy. It's like finally all that I worked for coming true. Being Grandmasters for me means that all the hard work that I put in last years and all the time that I spent the game is paying off. My favorite thing about Grandmasters would be that I get a chance to prove myself like on the big stage. What makes me unique as a player, I would say, is just bringing very complicated decks to tournament. It's mostly combo decks that people usually don't play. My personal goals this year will be to earn as much money as I can, of course, and yes, improve as a player and play the best I can.
Frozen currently up 1-0 after the Paladin mirror ends up going the OTK Holy Wrath Paladin direction versus the Murloc Paladin. We're going to another mirror for game number 2. It's Druid versus Druid, and this is a class that many people were very divided on when Savers Vol'dun first released. People said Quest Druid might be super good. I mean, it looks great on paper, but is it actually good in practice? And some players were saying, no, it's actually not that great because it's too slow. You're going to ramp up, and people just really take advantage of the fact that you start off very slowly. And then post-patch, it seems like Druid finally got that mage problem out of the way, and now has been crushing a lot on ladder.
Yeah, I felt like Mage was keeping so many decks in check, and it was also allowing other decks to shine. Like noticeably this week, very little Hunters and quite a few less Rogues. They were kind of in the metagame to combat the Mages, and now we're seeing that go away. And we're seeing decks that were being kept in check by Mages, like Quest Druid, come out in full force. And I think Quest Druid is one of the decks that's definitely solidly tier 1 now, where I maybe would have put it in tier 2 last week. But there were players even pre-patch that were having some success with Quest Druid. I know I ran into, I think, Papa Jason on ladder was playing Quest Druid. I also, Eddie had a pretty good performance in Soul with Quest Druid in the Specialist format, which is kind of surprising considering that field had a ton of mages. Beginning this mirror matchup, I think it's crucial to talk about the differences in their lists. You can see Chef Nomi for Frozen. PNC does not have a copy of Chef Nomi, but PNC does have a copy of Mind Control Tech, which is oftentimes pretty good for this matchup because either he's going to get value off it on something pretty large, or he's going to force Frozen to play maybe suboptimal lines to play around the possibility of a blowout from that card. The other difference is pretty minor. Frozen has 2 copies of Ferocious Howl, whereas PNC has 1 copy of Ferocious Howl and 1 copy of Bees. And that's it. Those are the only differences. Everything else is the same. They both have King Ferris at the top end, and they both have pretty standard lists beyond that, with 1 Power of the Wild and, of course, Zephyrus the Great thrown in.
Yeah, a lot of the differences in the deck list does tend to be what they feel like is going to be slightly more popular. You know, Bees being a much more important tool to help control the early state of the board in case your opponent has you know, early game pressure, or if they even play like evil totems against shamans, that's where I feel like Bees is the most clutch. But generally, I've been very underwhelmed by that card. I do think the mind control tech is also very fascinating, given that there are so many shamans, and even in the matchup, I think it is really swingy, just like you mentioned. It is kind of amusing to me that going second seems to be so important, given that you can innervate, or so you can coin out the quest. But it really does come down to how you follow up on the curve. You know, playing Oasis Surger on 5 means that your opponent can respond with their own Oasis Surger. And I do find that one of the most important cards to find a way to get to squeeze in this matchup is Nourish. Because Nourish does a few things. One, it obviously helps you draw cards and ramp, but what it does allow you to do is start to climb ahead of your opponent in the future turns, and then they have to figure out how to fight with just their tempo tools that they have in their hand. Yeah. So this is a situation where Frozen could completely just fine just playing Oasis Surger, and I'd be completely okay with it. But when I was playing this matchup a lot on ladder and climbing all the way before getting hard stuck at rank 300 Legend or so, I found that finding a way to squeeze in Nourish often helped define how the game panned out.
Yeah, and I think finding a way to when to like take a risk and take some hits
exactly
is also crucial to the game.
10 damage is a lot, so you know, and also we know that PNC has the ultimate punish, which is a second pair of Oasis Surgers plus Power of the Wild. That would have been too much to come back.
Or the bane of Druid's existence currently, which is just massive minions.
This is a good follow-up to it. I'm saying if Frozen didn't deal with the Oasis Surger, it would have been like this super like 4 6/6s and a 4/3. You would have just died.
Yeah, it would have been just insane. So I do agree with that play.
War Druid Lodi, that's the perfect card.
The perfect card.
He wished for it, and he got it. Is he not going to? I mean, he can take the 10 damage.
Yeah, in fact, this game is often not settled by... this matchup's often not settled by just raw, like, aggression. It's usually settled by a battle back and forth of resources, and one player ends the game in, like, you know, a single turn because they've gotten so far ahead on the board that they have so much damage. So you could take 10, you have Hidden Oasis to heal it back up, but I do think that he just wants to get on the board now. And then the problem of, do you keep War Druid Lodi's stealth? He does not have the Forbiddenness Floop. Granted, that's often saved for King Ferris, but it does mean that he gets pretty much free spell damage next turn. And because of the choose one spells in Druid, the spell damage is doubled up effectively.
Yeah.
Because with Starfall, you get a 6 damage and a 3 damage. With Wrath, you get a 4 damage and a 2 damage.
Yeah, look at this. He has pretty much a board clear now.
Yeah.
Because of the 2 Wraths. He could start things off with Wrath instead, so that way he might pick up Swipe and utilize that. But I don't think Swipe really does anything here. So Frozen, each Wrath does 6, and Starfall does 9 plus the 3 damage to everything else. Just keep those breakpoints in mind.
Yep.
And with that, double Wrath, Starfall is guaranteed clear.
Yep.
I mean, the Wrath just being able to take out a 6 health minion by itself, already extremely impressive. And the Anubisoft Defender able to come down for free, not something to scoff at either. Things are looking very good for Frozen, and this is exactly what we're talking about. Oh, the King Ferris. Okay, so now here's a different line that Frozen can take, which is I can save things like Starfall, go for a King Ferris, and then clear afterwards.
Ooh. So he could Wrath the Oasis Surger, trade War Druid Lodian, and then go for King Ferris next turn?
Yeah, he can. I mean, these are just options at his disposal, which is what makes it really cool. And quite frankly, I think this Druid deck, even though people might look at it and say, well, it's fairly obvious what you want to do, right? You just want to, like, finish the quest and do a bunch of stuff and play stuff.
Yeah.
I think that, once again, Druid has kind of put itself in a position where it can actually be debated on a lot of plays and how you set things up.
Oh, yeah.
I think players do end up messing up a lot of times. themselves,
I mean,
myself included.
We were practicing the matchup yesterday, and you were spectating me and Saldo doing practice matches, and even in the, you know, what, 2 full matches that we played of it, like 2 full, essentially best of 3s with the deck.
Played like 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, me and you even disagreed on a lot, and even Abar, who's the producer for Europe Grandmasters, who was there yesterday, who's played a lot of Quest Druid, had different lines than even me and you. So looking at a turn, 3 different, pretty high-level players, I'd call us, with different opinions on how to take a single turn was refreshing, honestly, because it was like, oh my gosh, I could do so many things better, right? Potentially, and that was cool to experience.
Yeah, and I think that it does have even more dimension when you start adding things like Chef Nomi and Elise in these tournament environments. Frozen has the Worthy Expedition, so he can discover a really expensive spell like Starfall or Hidden Oasis. Nourish even would actually be one of his best possible pickups.
Yeah.
I do like a King Ferris though in this spot because PNC does have the mind control tech. And that's maybe what Frozen's considering by having all these like cheaper spells in the hand, that it forces PNC to use other cards besides just the mind control tech. But these aren't that great options. He does pick up the Emperor Cobra, which is nice, but Gubarashi Offering, which is to start to turn, destroy this and gaining armor. I mean, Arcanosaur is supposed to be a 6-drop, but it's pretty weak. Overall, very meh. This seems like it can be dealt with by, like, a Starfall swipe.
Yeah, and PNC does have swipe, but no Starfall. And he only has enough mana for Lodi, Swipe, Wrath. He couldn't Lodi, Wrath, and look for Starfall because he'd be 1 mana off. So there's still not... He can't clear off still some of this. And Frozen, although he didn't have Floop in his hand when he went for this King Ferris, which is always kind of what you're worried about when you expend a lot of resources to kill a Ferris board, if they just reset and do it again. Right, with the same amount of spells, maybe even more if they're drawn off the top.
Right. I'm personally a big fan of tall and slightly less wide when it comes to the Druid Mirror, given that, especially if PNC's used both of his Oasis Surger, it's going to have difficulty dealing with mid-range minions, but you have to factor in stuff like Mind Control Tech, Forbidden Flute, for the back-to-back board swings. And so I think that's what's causing Frozen to reevaluate if he wants to build all of his minions very tall. Another Nourish. That's a pretty significant pickup here from Frozen. It gives him opportunity to pivot if he doesn't choose to go for the Hidden Oasis here.
Yeah. Ooh. Druid of the Claw. Probably the best option. Keeper of the Grove is just kind of weird.
So Druid the Claw can come out this turn. Frozen can play Nourish and then Druid the Claw because he'll be gaining back 2 mana. Seems like Frozen instead going to prioritize whatever is drawn off the top here. Where'd the Expedition number 2?
It's pretty interesting.
Ooh, Oasis Surgers. Whew. It's just the best card usually that's not like Cenarius or like the exact removal you need.
Time waits for no one.
Microtech is in the hand for PNC, but given how soft things have been tenderized by the previous spell damage swipe, I think everything's okay.
Yeah, but it's going to play into Mind Control Tech a little bit here. The Oasis Surger has the added benefit of when you steal it, it has the Crush. So PNC could effectively get like a 2-for-1 out of this Mind Control Tech.
If he picks up Floop, that could potentially be massive. I think PNC, yeah, he goes for the Nurse so he can get the Anoop Defender. He needs to pick up something with his remaining 6 mana, or in this case 3 mana. There's a swipe number 2.
Cool.
And he also has King Ferris, but King Ferris in this spot doesn't feel super great because you're more dependent on the spell swinging the board than developing.
I wonder.
The only play that allows him to go for mind control tech this turn is bees. And I think he should heavily consider if he wants to bees first, if he wants to improve the chances of stealing a high impact minion like an Oasis Surger. Oasis Surger is the best take on his opponent's side right now.
Yeah, because he can use the rush effect to trade over the Lodi or the Defender.
Okay, second best option. I guess the second best option was the Lodi. We'll take it. You know, if I'm PNC, in the back of my mind, I'm actually considering attacking with the Lodi too. I know there's still the spell damage swipe. I just want to think about it for a sec. I guess you don't have much time left.
Yeah.
But, you know, with board buff and removal, this looks really, really, really scary.
Yeah. Oh, man. So there's 10 power on board, 15 power on board. If you count the Power of the Wild, that's 19 power on board. Swipe does not have the spell power any longer. So there's no potential lethals here. I don't think there would have been anyway. The Lodi on the other side doesn't have stealth, but you wouldn't be able to get through both of the Anubis defenders.
Well, there's Poisonous, so Poisonous helps because path to stealth, and then Swipe can deal, or Starfall rather, can deal with the other one.
Yeah.
I wonder.
13, 16.
It's pretty
close. It's
yeah,
close.
But not quite there yet. He can even use Druid of the Scythe, which will be a 4/4 buffed up to a 5/5 for Power of the Wild.
Yes.
So it looks like just Druid of the Scythe, Power of the Wild, and then Push and Lunge. Yeah.
But that's where the Power of the Wild, I think, is also fairly relevant, given that it buffs everything, just makes it difficult for the spell damage to be relevant.
Yeah.
You know? And that's the one case that I was making for why I felt like it was important for PNC to maybe attack, just to get a little bit of that life back. This is a little bit too tall, too wide now. King Ferris would have to get Reckless Rocketeer, Damage Degatron, Sunwalker to have a chance of surviving, because Frozen does have ways to push past it. He has a swipe.
Oh, man. Nourish could still pick up Starfall with the spell damage on board. He'd have 6 mana available afterwards. He could also pick up Worthy Expedition, which could give him Starfall as well. He'd have perfect mana for that. But even then, he's still leaving up something. And
yeah, this might be a hidden Oasis moment here, like swipe and hit Oasis.
Yeah. Even the swipe's kind of awkward, right? Because he only takes out 1 minion, 2 if he wants to trade in the War Druid.
Right. The idea of the swipe hidden Oasis is that you've given up like a giant board swing with swipe, and you're trying to fight back more honestly. Hidden Oasis gets challenged, right, by just a 6 attack minion.
Yeah.
So it's not like it locks anything out. Yeah. PNC unhappy. I'd be too if I were him.
Yeah, I mean, this gets traded into on board. And honestly, Frozen has the super late game advantage because he's playing Chef Nomi. And he also has 2 Chef Nomis effectively because he still hasn't used his Forbiddenness Floop. So PNC needs to find a lot of resources and start putting on some effective counter pressure for himself, or else Frozen's going to run away with this game. And even if he doesn't run away with the game, then he's got kind of the last say.
Yep, I like this play from Frozen. It's, well, it's essentially saying, I don't care about my life total right now. I'm ahead on board, secure board tempo, and I think it's a really smart play to use Hidden Oasis on a minion. A lot of times people feel like because they're down in the teens that they need to heal up immediately, but you're just as safe at 16 as you are at 28 in this spot if you're Frozen.
Yeah, that's plenty of life.
PNC picks up Worthy Expedition, and I think he has to find a high-impact thing like an Ancient of War.
Oh, jeez.
So Wrath is okay. I think that PNC was planning on playing Nourish anyways if he didn't pick up a high-impact minion or spell.
Yeah. Cenarius may be in the one that he was specifically looking for. That's why he played that after the Nourish, or sorry, before the Nourish.
Still find 2 Wraths. Let's find the second one, and Anubis Sentinels. Or sorry, Defender. Okay, reasonable.
Running out of time. Doesn't have time to react to the Wrath draws.
Well, he is playing the Duke of South Defender. That much is clear.
Yeah.
Interesting that he's taking out the Oasis Surger. Not the taunt minion. If you kill the taunt minion, it gives you flexibility of how you attack.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's any bounce to punish, right? The idea is to kill the minions so that they can't bounce it. Don't think it matters.
Yeah.
Hidden Oasis again. I mean, Frozen does have the opportunity to play the Crystal Merchant, get closer to the bottom of his deck, invest that into the board. The moment he picks up Cenarius, this game is 100% locked.
Jewels of the sun. Ooh.
Finds Zephyrus. That might be enough to close out the game too.
Yeah, Zephyrus is active, I believe. There's 5 cards left remaining in the deck. One is Cenarius, one is Forbiddeness Floop, one is Swipe.
If you're PNC, do you feel like this is the only time you get to play Ferris and get a chance to win the game? We have to bank on the fact that Frozen has 13 damage and he doesn't have his second swipe, and he doesn't have Zephyrus. They have to be in the bottom 5.
Yeah, he knows that if Zephyrus is in hand, it's active unless both Ferocious Howls are in the bottom, which is very unlikely. So if you do that and don't get a taunt or multiple chargers to clear up these Hidden Oasis, you're dead. But if you don't take a risk, you're just going to get grinded out. I mean, he could go for double Starfall here. But that's a big investment, and
Cenarius softens it up, but if Frozen Cenarius is right back, he's in a similar spot where he has to double Starfall.
Yeah.
It might be the Cenarius is the safest play. Part of me thinks that you would have to statistically bank on Frozen not having things like Zephyrus.
Yeah.
Or swipe number 2. But Frozen's been holding a card, Chef Nomi on the far left, so maybe that's what's scaring PNC. He's like, he's been holding a card for so long. Surely he has it. Yep. Frozen. Is there a draw for lethal with Ferocious Howl to narrow things down? I don't think so.
Is there a Zephyrus? No. Zephyrus Hellfire Swipe would do it. If he had Swipe in hand, he could Zephyrus Swipe Hellfire push. Or Shadowflame. Both would work. But he does not have that second swipe and won't have mana if he Ferocious Howls first. So we're starting to get into some a little bit of weird territory here for Frozen, where he's had the initiative the entire game. I'm trying to think of Zephyrus, but
with 5 mana and 2 attacks done, seems like it's just going to be a Shadow or Death situation.
Yeah.
Soul of Forest is interesting too, huh?
Okay. He does have enough
Sea Giant.
Yeah, he has exact mana for Sea Giant with 5 minions on board. But Soul of Fire is going to be the play, and a card will be drawn from Crystal Merchant as well this turn.
Just makes a sticky board, and then has a high chance for Frozen to eventually draw into his Cenarius. PNC picks up the Floop. The Soul of the Forest does require PNC to double Starfall to clear the board. And I think that's probably what Frozen's reasoning was. If he plays Shadow or Death, he knows his board is going to get cleared by 1 Starfall plus development.
Yeah.
And if PNC was holding a Floop on the far left instead of King Ferris, it could have been that PNC plays Starfall into Cenarius, which would have been bad for Frozen.
Yeah.
So this Soul of the Forest ends up being a very good pick here for Frozen. And that's something that I wasn't immediately recognizing, and just it's the stuff that really makes the Druid matchup quite scary. It's very volatile sometimes.
Yeah, very volatile, and Frozen has also put himself in a position where if PNC were to go for double Starfall this turn, Frozen has Chef Nomi online next turn. He Ferocious Howl, which draws his last cards, and then Chef Nomi's with both Starfalls gone because of the Soul of the Forest. It's very enticing to go for. It means that Chef Nomi will just end the game.
And the added benefit is that even if PNC finds a way to play King Ferris, not going to be super impactful with 2 5-mana minions gone.
Yeah.
Now Frozen can go for the Chef Nomi play, And that should be checkmate.
Job's done.
I don't see a way for PNC to get out of this.
I'm almost out of cards.
Did he forget about the Nomi? He looks very upset about something, which either he forgot about the Nomi or he forgot that the second Ferocious Howl was there.
Oh, yeah. It would probably be something like the second Ferocious Howl.
Yeah.
Because he thought he maybe had one extra turn.
Yeah. And
unless he really, really, really hates that he just drew Crystal Merchant this turn.
I mean, the last card in his deck is... What is it?
Let's see. Shrew's Innervate, untapped, Worthy Expedition. His Ferocious Howl? No, he hasn't.
Our power is in our time waits for no one.
Oh, that's funny. Cartoon Defender.
Oh, it's Zephyrus.
Oh, that's why. Zephyrus is his last card. You're right.
So
he was hoping that if he got Zephyrus.
He would Zephyrus into Twisting Nether and then floop Zephyrus into Brawl.
Yes.
And then he'd be ahead in Fatigue, Frozen be out of resources. So he didn't forget that it was there.
Yes, you're right.
He had a I mean, this is all assumption, of course, but it looks like he had a perfect setup to deal with the double Nomi from Frozen. He had Zephyrus into Zephyrus.
Yes. But that's also forgetting that Frozen has Zephyrus, too.
He had played Zephyrus. He got the Soul of the Forest.
Oh, you're
Zephyrus.
right.
So, and if you looked at the hands at the end, he would have had a King Ferris as well, and Frozen would have had an Oasis Surger. So it wasn't Frozen had Cenarius too. So it wasn't guaranteed by any means.
He had big development. I felt like I was forgetting that Frozen did have big development.
He did have big development. So it was the best possible setup that he could have done. It was Zephyrus into Twisting Nether and then the Floop Zephyrus for 4 mana into Brawl.
Right.
But then likely a 6/6 would have survived.
Plus
Frozen developed Cenarius behind that.
And then he has the King Ferris anyway.
And then he has the King Ferris anyway with just a hidden Oasis. So it looks like
that's dicey. It's dicey.
That's probably a Frozen win regardless.
But
honestly.
It would have been a lot closer.
It would have been a lot closer.
Yeah.
But
and the Crystal Merchant did end up ruining it, and I guess we were right. He hated seeing. He didn't want to see it.
Yeah, he hated seeing the Crystal Merchant.
All right, let's go ahead and check in with Frozen. He's waiting on the line there. Frozen, you there?
Yo, what's up, guys?
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the mirrors there. Let's start things off with the Paladin versus Paladin. Looked like you were able to get there pretty comfortably, but was there any scary moments for you personally when you were navigating that matchup that had Prismatic Lens on 4?
Not exactly. I think that matchup specifically is the statistic. I think I'm behind in that matchup, but like pretty badly behind, but during like testing and how the matchup goes, I think the Holy Wrath Paladin, if played really well, should be pretty favored. So, and I think that Holy Wrath Paladin in general is like a deck that people misplay a lot, so I didn't mind that. And then the Druid game, that matchup I have never played. Actually, I've never played Druid at all, like the new Druid. And I was planning on people banning it, but it ended up going through, and we got the mirror. So it was kind of but I watched like 2 or 3 Druid mirrors earlier, and I got like the gist of it, where you just like keep the Lodi stealth and then try to maximize some AoE damage on your spell power and then really pull ahead. Yeah, so I think because I had it early, it's really, really good for me.
Got it. Is there a particular reason why you weren't able to sync as much time? Were you just really busy this week, or were you practicing other decks?
Yeah, pretty busy. I'm still in Korea. I've still been hanging out with Kaka and other friends from home. So most of the time we've been going out. So
it's season 5 of Grandmasters, and Frozen is still in Korea. I can see it now.
Is this where he's defected and become an expat? To part of Korea?
Yeah, everyone else is probably still at the club right now, so I'm probably going to hop in.
All right, great. Seems like at least thank you for taking some time and showing up on camera too, despite the travels. Did you figure out anything else about the Druid matchup? Now, because we did realize that PNC was in a 50-50 situation to draw Zephyrus, and then he still had his floop, so it would have set things up. Was there anything else that you kind of picked up on the matchup as you were playing it?
Just try to get really far ahead. I mean, I double checked like what the highest win rate cards are in the matchup, and then figure out like what to keep. There's some turns where I saw Bunny Hopper play a little bit differently, where he didn't nourish on curve, which I thought was kind of weird, but it made a lot of sense. And then he like prioritized tempo. So during my match, I tried to prioritize as much tempo as possible, and I knew he had like that sort of weird out where he could like get me, but I didn't think it would be able to get there since I still had other value. But there was like, so the Zephyr turn where I played Zephyr, I could have saved it, but I thought that it was gonna give me circle of healing, but it didn't.
Oh,
so
okay, gotcha.
that was kind of rough. Like
right.
I basically wasted it. I knew he's likely to have double AoE, but
we thought you were forcing AoE so that you could play proactively. Okay. All right. Well, we'll just end the interview here. Thank you so much, Frozen. Have fun in Korea. Come back sometime to America, because you know, if you keep winning, we'll need you back eventually. Anyways, good luck in your match later this weekend.
See you guys.